Yeah, it's no surprise that people in Japan will simp for anything with Nintendo and Pokemon in its name. But once again, this is a very irksome thing. Sure,
Pokemon sells.
but isn't that the problem? Sure, this is only in Japan, but all this proves once again is that this is the franchise where mediocrity sells and quality fails. Yeah, it's more
Doom and gloom, Jesus. Do you guys ever stop complaining?
That reminds me of the retards that say shit like,
Gee, no one hates Pokemon like its fans.
and to that I say, gee, no one simps to Pokemon's fecal matter like you bootlickers. Here's a brilliant rundown of these games' shining technical issues, among other things. The games were nonchalantly designed on the Unity game engine. They are also the same ROM, and you literally have to just flick a flag just to switch between the files on that exact same ROM. Due to their laughably incomplete state, they require a day one patch, which means version 1.0.0 was always that progress so far and unfinished homework. And even after 2 day one patches, the games are still incredibly broken. Speaking of those patches, they are just enablers. A lot of things in the games won't work at all and will just simply be inaccessible without said patches, which is one of many points I've driven home more than enough times about these games. I don't need to look for something to hate about these games. Ilka and Game Freak already provided more than enough of that ammo. And that's the thing. Game Freak and Ilka ought to set higher standards for themselves, but we know why they won't. Just look at the largely impressionable fan base, and they should do this rather than have this reliance and over-reliance on patches when you're representing the highest grossing franchise. But of course, that bar still doesn't exist and hasn't existed since the older games. If I recall correctly, I haven't seen that bar I speak of since Black 2 and White 2, but yeah, it's no surprise that their unfinished homework still requires more footnotes. And Matthias, I don't know why you felt the need to make a disclaimer, because you're right, the bar for the Pokemon games has been the equivalent of the core of this sad little planet since, well, actually X and Y. But hey, despite all of that and then some, if Japan is any indication, it's Pokemon, so it's going to sell regardless. Nothing is wrong, and I'm sure the consensus for any critic is,
You're just rooting for the games to fail.
even without patches. How the fuck do you approve of such a woefully incomplete product? Despite research and development, despite the troubleshooting process, and even when you consider patches, when you can still soft lock yourself in a video game. I know that's nothing new, just like day one patches. That straw man is duly noted. It's like using the fact that patches exist for these very problems as a cop-out. You're ignoring the big picture here. That also reminds me of people who use the straw man.
Well, Ilka, it's their fault.
While ignoring the fact that Game Freak, no matter who is working on their games, co-developing the games with them, etc., still has seniority over their product. But then they'll do a 180 and say,
Well, Game Freak didn't let Ilka do everything that they wanted to do.
because their argument is so shitty that in their sad attempt to defend Ilka and or Game Freak, they end up spazzing out, trying to defend one over the other while playing the blame game with both. Damn. These simps act like you're out of line for criticizing a poor performer. But hey, for all of your troubles, soft locks and all, you get to enjoy some Grand Underground DLC. To solve that technical issue with the games, you'll have to do something along the lines of pressing button sequences on your startup screen, which also had to be patched in. The former function for deleting all of your save data ends up being a must-have backup save data option because of how broken these games manage to be more than Sword and Shield. As a matter of fact, let's roll a bit of that soft lock footage. Here's a bit of context for this one. So not only can you potentially phase into and through NPCs, but you even run the risk of encountering the same predicament by simply pulling up a fucking menu. You can't even pause these games without running the risk of soft locking them. The closest the older games ever came to something like that, if I recall correctly, is with the infamous Lumio City glitch, where before they offered a patch to fix that problem, it wasn't safe for you to save in Lumio City. Other than that, it's no surprise that all of the other Pokemon games, so far anyway, didn't even come close to something like this. And the first gen games are notorious for having some of, if not the most, bugs and glitches in them, because obviously they are the very first main series Pokemon games. How are they more technically competent? Otherwise, with those games, you'd have to look for the same kind of trouble. But hey, it's Pokemon, and it will sell no matter what. There are no problems. No bar needs to be set. This totally isn't some irksome foreshadowing of the carefree effort. They are being given a signal to keep on regurgitating. I'm sure patches will come along and fix all of this outside of a lucky backup save data save. But is that really the point? I mean, do they just patch up everything and everything's okay? And then when they create main series Pokemon games in the future that are even more broken, they just patch those up and everything's okay. Pokemon sells millions and millions more copies and nothing's ever wrong. Damn, no matter how obvious the point is, it still manages to whoosh over a lot of impressionable heads, regardless. But of course, those are the same brainlets that will pretend that sales ever equated to quality. I apologize in advance, Pokemon Legends Arceus.